My name is Animesh. I graduated out of IIT Delhi in 2004, and I started a business called iTasveer in 2005 end. This was a photo sharing and photo printing service. We ran this for almost 5 years. It turned out to be a small lifestyle business, and we got a small exit out of it. I joined as a founding team member at HealthCard around March 2011. I used to run the marketing there. I was there for almost 3 years, and then from within HealthCard, I moved into a business that kind of shot out from within HealthCard. It used to be called HealthCard Plus. Now it's known as 1MG. So that used to be an online pharmacy business. Both of these companies are actually pretty well funded. They're going well. I recently started working on a new business myself, so I'm in familiar shoes as all of you. So the topic that was given to me was to talk about product development challenges. I primarily actually have a technology background. While my professional roles were not around technology, but I've always taken time out to do stuff around engineering. So when I was now making my slides, I thought about what does a mind that thinks about product development looks like. I googled for product development thought cloud, and this dude came up. So he's thinking about all kinds of nice things, technology, innovation, market, research, ideas, and so on. Great snapshot of what's going on when you're thinking about product development. So I wanted a similar snapshot of my mind. So what do I think when I'm thinking of product development? So, and this talk is somewhat personal in nature. I'm trying to talk about what are the challenges I face. So I wanted to do a snapshot of my mind. So I went and met this guy. How many of you know this guy? So he's so he can read minds. So I asked him to do my snapshot when I'm in my product development mode. So this is what I got. So you can see I think about UI UX, features, front end, back end. Actual work is happening. Nothing unusual. So now these are awesome thoughts, So I've tried to kind of think deeply about what are the challenges I face, and yeah. So this is a scientific chart of a spectrum of what product development brains look like. I'm somewhere here, so which deserves again a quick show of hands. How many of you think you're from this 0 to 4 range of things when you look at these snapshots? Okay, a few. 4 to 5 to 8. Is there a negative scale? Is there a negative scale? And those of you who did not raise hands either are the negative scale ones, or maybe there are some Steve Jobs around. So, all right. Anyway, so getting on to the talk. The challenges that in product development that you will probably encounter also vary very drastically when you're talking about a small startup versus a very large enterprise. And most of our audience here is small startups, so that's how we want to segment. So this is also something interesting I want to talk about. So, and this happens in the growth of a company. So we started as a startup. If I think about HealthCard when I was doing that, there's great camaraderie. Camaraderie is like loyalty and kinship. Everyone likes each other, and they're working as a team. Productive work is getting done, and around the 10 people size, things take a different turn. So all kinds of fun stuff like politics start to happen, and you get to deploy a middle management layer. Middle management is supposed to manage people. There's HR and so on. So all kinds of fun stuff. But we're not going to talk about that. We're going to stick with the startup mode where we're focused on problems which do not have to deal with the people problems, which tend to be big problems when you're a larger enterprise. So, all right. So here we go. So now, of course, the elephant in the room is money. When you're thinking of product development, this is a huge challenge because right now you've not, by definition, this is product development mode, and you've not started making money out of it. You're kind of trying to bring your idea to fruition, and money is also equivalent, a substitute for resources or time, etc. Unless you have any of those, you're not going to get ahead. So, assuming that you somehow have this problem solved for the little while, and you can invest time and energy into doing products. So we'll start from the beginning. When you're thinking about your idea. So one of the challenges that I usually face is this echo chamber of my own thoughts. So my idea sounds to be pretty cool in my own head, and if I even try to bounce it off of a few friends, they'll probably say, okay, theek keh raha tu, sahi hai. But they're being modest. They cannot necessarily hit you with the truth. But it's very, very common. So your idea sounds great in your head. So you have to figure out a way to bounce it off a sounding board of people, and also in some cases take that feedback with a grain of salt, because let's face it, it's not it's something that has not yet been created. You'll get all kinds of opinion, and you got to take what you can, listen to feedback, critical feedback, and try to get the best out of it. So one of the things that I try to do to kind of vet my ideas is I write them down, and in probably a summary, a short summary of what my idea is supposed to be, and I read it, let's say, a month later. A lot of times you'll probably yourself find that it was not that great when I was in that frame of mind. It's reading yourself back after a while, like if you read your own code which you wrote an year back, you'll probably say, what is this? This is nonsense. I don't ascribe to this. So now let's say you get past the idea stage and you want to start building stuff. So and this has been talked about a lot in all kinds of startup literature now. You probably want to define what your MVP is going to look like. Again, it's not this is not science because it's subjective in nature. I've in fact found that a lot of times the definition of an MVP goes to an extreme where there's a lot of focus on being minimum, and which means the product tends to be less useful. So not every product can be built in a month or 3 months. Sometimes what you're building might be a 8 months project, but you have to kind of still take those judicious calls about what your MVP will look like, and all of these are important. So it of course has to be something that is minimum, because you're not going to have all the funding in the world to pull it off or all the time. It has to be viable, otherwise how would anyone ever use it? And it has to be a product. Okay, I don't have anything to say about that. So now, if you've defined your MVP, a lot of times, again, this is something that I have faced a number of times doing my own stuff. Marketing is often thought of as a separate function, but for a lot of the products that we talk about today, which are distributed over the internet without, let's say, a salesperson going there and teaching the user how to use it. They're distributed over a medium which is accessible all over the world. Marketing is often not an afterthought, and it often affects your product architecture as well. So it's very important to understand how your product will be distributed, and probably strategize around that and figure out if those features are native features of your product and not some marketing tool that you'll slap on later. For example, add the script and in 5 minutes you'll have a referral program on your website. So that's not how typically a successful referral program will be designed. So if you think about your product, your use case, it is possible that you'll have to go back and look at your engineering decisions and make sure that when I'm going to do this kind of a referral program, my engineering should have been done accordingly. And now when you've defined this scope, figured out what to build, this is again a problem that comes often. You probably want to build a lot of things and start building them out also. In all the excitement, you'll probably start building them out. But now more than ever, you'll probably find a solution to your problem by someone who's already worked on it for longer than you have. And these are all sorts of examples. So let's say you're building a chat app. So the gentleman here was building a chat app. So you might decide, I'll implement my own socket server. It'll be fast. I'll have all sorts of control over it. But when you're doing your first version, probably it'll take up your time. And if you look around, there are a number of services that can give you a efficient, socket server, which you can use right off the bat. So that's just an example. So it could be, a specific type of a database that fits your need, and you don't have to kind of do wacky data models. Or it could be an image hosting service. If you're a photo sharing site, you could use something that already has image hosting and photo processing, etc. built in. You don't have to build those algorithms, etc. So there are a lot of options out there, and you'll probably find those options, on all levels. So there are open source options, there are paid options. Don't discount the paid options because they in fact can turn out to be better ROI, because your time while you're paying for them, you don't have to deploy them, manage them, figure out what bugs are in them, etc. So it's a worthwhile investment figuring out what are the pieces you're going to pick off the shelves and probably integrate them together to get your first version of the product out. It's understandable if you later want to build some of these things which are more core to you within your product, but I feel it's a good exercise to look around and see what you can reuse. And then we get into the trap of optimizing, or choosing what to optimize is also one of the key problems that I face. It is both optimizing the wrong thing, micro optimizing for things that don't matter, or not optimizing things that do matter. I'm sure you probably must have just to take an example. So if you're doing a web app, let's say, and you have a relational database backing it, and one of your pages does not load as fast. So is that really a problem of the database? Should you go about denormalizing your queries, or is that just that you've not structured it well, your indexes are missing, etc. Usually at a smaller scale, these infrastructure pieces are not the bottleneck. For example, your language is never the bottleneck. You can write code in PHP or whatever, Erlang. It's not going to matter unless you have, thousands of concurrent users. And while doing this development, you'll probably come across features that you want to do, which you hadn't thought of before. They look very innocent, this looks like a one-day feature. I could just get it in. They're usually not, because, and it's true for any feature. If you think about it deeply enough, it probably affects your architecture down the stream more than you imagine. So I like to take an example here from one of the times when we were, the early days of HealthCart, when we were building our e-commerce platform. We figured that when a product goes out of stock, we should have a notify me button there so that a customer can say, when it is back in stock, send me an email or SMS or whatever. So, and to an engineer who's not thinking deeply enough about it, it'll be like, it's a one hour thing. I'll do it. I'll put a button there, notify me, will go into a database, done. But is that the whole of it? Does it, will that successfully achieve what you want to achieve out of that feature? Probably no. So let's think about it. So a notify me is supposed to also then when a product actually comes back in stock, it's supposed to send out emails to all users who have asked for it. So, but is that all? Can you think of what could go wrong with that? An e-commerce site. So we were an inventory-led e-commerce site.
Stock.
Yeah. So let's say I was out of stock for a product. It was a protein ka dabba. Out of stock for it for let's say 5 days, and 100 people or maybe 1,000 people said notify me. So now when the product comes back in stock, let's say 100 boxes came back in stock. Now should I send my email to all 1,000 of these people? Should I send it to a limited number of people? Should I, prioritize who to send it to first and who to send it to later? Should I even send it? My investors are saying you should be doing new customer acquisition. Don't do repeat. So all sorts of questions. So and you'll probably not think of it unless you go deeper into it. It's from the surface it looks simple, but it depends on the business. It depends on what you're trying to achieve out of it, etc. Now, let's say you manage to get a basic prototype out. It's really useful to get it out in the hands of what your potential real users could be, to see how they're going to use it. Because if you wait till the finished version, it'll probably be too late, to tweak around with things. So try to get it out in the hands of a few beta testers. A beta launch before the real launch makes a lot of sense, because unless you see people using it, by that I really mean seeing them use it, not just launching it and waiting for some analytics charts to show you what's going on. So actually see what they use. If it's an app, let them hold it in their hands and look at them trying to click around and see what's there. Are they able to achieve what you want them to achieve, or maybe ask them to do a particular task and see if they can do that, because it always surprises you. So even the simplest of products, people probably don't see it like you do. Your internal team has a inherent bias for using it in a way where you've always talked about it. So your internal team or your software testers are never going to be enough to discover those edge cases. And lastly, I guess it's about timing the launch. Despite all these chinks, you probably have to go ahead and launch the software launch the app or website or business for real. Because unless you do that, you're again not going to get feedback. You'll have to live with a few bugs. You'll have to live with a not so perfect version, and start incorporating that real world feedback. So it's also, it's not just about that technology product that you're launching. You want to get real market feedback around your business model, your revenue model, etc. So yeah, that's about it. I think I'm done with my advice here. It's so lastly, I would like to add that all this advice is it's not black and white. There's a thin line, and you could perhaps only you would understand your vertical or domain better to make that call. And it's also only in retrospect that a lot of these decisions can be called right or wrong. And maybe even then not then. So there's always a factor of luck involved. Yeah, that's about it. Thank you.